There's something I've learned, and I want to share it with you not as some grand advice, but more like a quiet truth I've stumbled into. It's about men, about love, about what happens inside a man when he really, truly cares. And I don't mean the kind of caring that's loud, full of big words and romantic declarations. I mean something much more subtle, something that moves under the surface, almost invisible unless you know where to look. You know how sometimes a man doesn't say much. He might even act like he's fine, unbothered, detached. But then you catch this tiny flicker, the way his eyes linger on you when he thinks you're not watching, or how his whole body seems to lean toward you in a room full of people, and for a moment you wonder, is that real, or am I just imagining it? I've asked myself that so many times, but now I know it's real, and it's not your imagination. It's your intuition picking up what logic can't explain. I used to be obsessed with words. I needed to hear them. I miss you. I love you. You matter. If he didn't say it, I doubted it. And yet, I ignored the way he remembered things I barely even remembered telling him, like my favorite kind of tea, the exact way I like my scarf tied in the winter, a song I mentioned once in passing, playing softly in the background when I came over. I didn't realize back then that this was his way of loving, quiet, steady, almost invisible, but true. What changed everything for me was understanding how much men are taught to hide what they feel. From the moment they're little boys, they're told not to cry, not to show weakness, not to talk about emotions. So they don't. They bottle it up, and then one day, they fall in love. Real love. And something inside them breaks open. Not in a dramatic way, more like a quiet shift. They don't even understand it at first. They just know they feel drawn to you, pulled toward you, and their behavior starts changing without them realizing. He'll start showing up more, not with grand gestures, but in these small, intentional ways. He might not say, "I'm here for you," but he'll notice when you're tired and silently take care of something without asking. He'll remember what matters to you and weave it into his actions. You'll begin to notice that when you speak, he listens, not just with his ears, but with his whole attention. And even if he doesn't respond right away, he brings it up later. That's how you know he's holding on to your words. There's something beautiful about a man who's trying to love with all the parts of himself that we're never taught how. It's awkward sometimes, clumsy. He might retreat when it gets too intense, not because he doesn't care, but because it scares him how much he does. It's like his subconscious is years ahead of his conscious mind. He hasn't caught up yet, but still his actions speak, maybe even louder than words ever could. And when you're not around, he doesn't forget you. In fact, your image follows him. He doesn't try to call it up, it just appears. When he's working, walking, driving, something reminds him of you, and he finds himself smiling, then shaking his head, pretending he didn't feel that wave of warmth. He might not even admit it to himself. But it's there, quietly reshaping the way he thinks, what he prioritizes, how he moves through the world. I know it's confusing, especially when his words and actions don't always match. I've been there, I've questioned it all. But here's what I've learned. The body never lies. The subconscious doesn't play games. You can tell a man is in love not by what he says, but by how he behaves when no one is watching. How he makes space for you without needing to be asked. How he softens, little by little, even if he pretends he's not. We all want certainty. We want someone to look us in the eye and say, "You are the one." But sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in poetry. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in presence, in a man shifting his entire rhythm just to be a little closer to the woman who changed something in him, not with effort, but by simply being who she is. I wish someone had told me this earlier, that love often whispers instead of shouting, that it lives in the tiny spaces between what we show and what we feel. And now that I see it, I can't unsee it. I don't chase words anymore. I watch, I listen, and most importantly, I trust the quiet signals, the ones that speak straight from the soul. Have you ever seen a man rearrange his entire life without even realizing he's doing it? Not in a dramatic, movie-like way, but slowly, silently, like the way seasons change. That's what happened. His schedule started to shift. The things that used to matter most, late nights with friends, solo weekend plans, workaholic routines, they began to bend around me. Not because I asked, not because he owed me anything, but because somewhere deep inside, he already saw me as part of his world. At first I didn't notice, I just felt safer, more grounded, like something solid had taken root beneath all the uncertainty. He'd still be the same, quiet, reserved, a little hard to read, but suddenly he'd show up on a random Tuesday with my favorite soup because I'd mentioned I wasn't feeling well. Or he'd call just to say nothing at all, just to hear my voice maybe. I don't know, but it felt like I had been threaded into his days, stitched into the very fabric of how he existed. The more I tuned into this, the more I began to notice other things, like how he always faced me when we talked, even when the room was crowded. His legs angled toward mine, his eyes scanning my face not with hunger but with curiosity, like he was trying to memorize me. I caught him watching me when I wasn't speaking, when I was just existing in the moment. He'd look away quickly, pretending he wasn't caught. But I saw it. I felt it, that pull, that magnetic, almost gravitational presence he had around me. And I didn't realize until then how much I craved it. Not attention, not flattery, but presence. Real, undivided, wordless presence. He never said, "I'm changing for you." But I saw it in the way he started to care about things he never used to notice. My comfort, my opinions, even my silences. He became someone who looked for small ways to make my life easier, not as a strategy, not to impress me, but because it came naturally. He remembered how I liked my coffee. He adjusted his pace to match mine when we walked. He never interrupted me, even when I was rambling. These weren't grand declarations. They were acts of quiet devotion. And still, he rarely spoke about his feelings, not directly, but the way he leaned into our connection, even without understanding it fully himself, told me everything. He started inviting me into his inner world, his routines, his people. Slowly, I met his friends, then his family, and each time I could feel it, the unspoken message. She matters, not because he introduced me formally, but because of the way he looked at me when they asked who I was, like I was something rare he hadn't expected to find. He began to ask for my thoughts about his future, about things I thought were none of my business. Career decisions, long-term goals, money worries, things men often keep to themselves. And still, he asked and listened. He started using words like we and us, not in a forced way, but as if it had been natural all along, like his subconscious had already redrawn the map of his life, and I was already on it. You know, I used to believe love was supposed to come with fireworks, grand gestures, intense confessions, dramatic passion. But this was different. This was steadier, deeper, quieter, like water slowly shaping stone, like something inevitable. The hardest part was trusting it, because we're so trained to look for the obvious, the flashy, the verbal. But this love, it whispered. It lived in the pauses, in the way he stood a little closer, in the way he'd offer his hand without saying a word when I looked overwhelmed. It didn't need permission, it just was. And I started to realize that this kind of love, the real kind, doesn't try to possess or prove. It simply includes. It opens a space and says, "Stay as long as you want. I'll be here." And the more I let myself soften into that space, the more I felt myself changing too. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to earn. I could just be. And somehow that was enough. I think that's the truest sign of love. When someone doesn't try to rewrite you, but rearranges themselves to make room for you, all without asking you to shrink or shift in return. And that's when it hit me. Love isn't just about how someone makes you feel in the moment. It's about how they're willing to change, quietly, in ways you don't even ask for. You see, there's a deeper part of love that isn't spoken, that isn't obvious. It doesn't shout from the rooftops or demand grand gestures. It's the quiet things that happen behind the scenes, like him adjusting his life so that your existence isn't just a passing thought, but an ongoing presence in the background of his every day. At first, I thought it was about the way he would put in the effort, but now I realize it was never about effort. It was about something deeper, more authentic. He didn't do it because he thought it was what he was supposed to do or because he was trying to win me over. No, he did it because he couldn't help it. His heart had already made room for me, and everything about him began to reflect that. His actions were just the outer expressions of something much deeper that he couldn't even articulate. And as I stood there, watching him grow in his own quiet way, I realized how much we do the same for each other without even knowing it. We're constantly shifting, growing, becoming more ourselves with every moment that passes. And love, true love, helps that process. It doesn't demand we be perfect or even that we stay the same. It encourages us to evolve and to find ourselves in the spaces we once thought were too risky to touch. But it's not easy. The temptation is always there to second guess, to wonder if you're reading the signs correctly. I've caught myself doing it, checking the small moments, wondering if I was missing something. But that's the funny thing about love, isn't it? The more we try to control it, the further it slips from our grasp. It doesn't thrive on conditions or demands. It simply grows, quietly, and waits for you to notice the changes it's made in you, too. And that's the thing about knowing someone loves you, really loves you. You don't need to ask them for it. You can feel it in the way they shift around you, in the way they show up. Love is present in the stillness, in the way their thoughts align with yours without a word being said. It's the comfort of knowing that no matter how small the gesture, it's always coming from a place of deep authenticity. There's something profoundly beautiful in the way a person will change for someone they love, not because they're trying to make a point or win you over, but because they simply can't help it. It's as if the universe has gently reshaped them, little by little, until they're exactly who they need to be for you. And that transformation doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. In the end, love isn't about words or promises. It's about presence, about someone shifting their whole world to fit you into it, and you, in turn, reshaping yourself for them, not out of obligation, but because you want to. It's an organic process, one that can't be faked or forced, and it's the quietest, truest form of connection. And it's in those quiet moments when you least expect it that you realize this is love, real, deep, and profound. You know, the more I reflect on it, the more I see that love isn't something that can be defined by any one moment or gesture. It isn't the words we say or the actions we perform to prove something. It's the cumulative result of countless small acts that, when pieced together, form a narrative that's entirely our own. It's the way a person shifts their reality without even thinking twice, because their heart has already decided that you're part of their future. It's about the commitment that goes unnoticed by the world, but resonates deeply in the quiet moments between two people. What struck me most was how he didn't need to make declarations, how, even without saying, "I'm yours" or "I love you," his actions spoke everything that words could not. He made space for me in his life, not with promises or grand displays, but in the little everyday things, the ways he adjusted, the way his thoughts began to orbit around me. It was in how, when we were together, I felt like I wasn't just a fleeting thought in his mind, but someone he was building a future with, silently, naturally, without even realizing it. I'd never seen love in this way before. I had always believed that love was about those passionate declarations, the grand gestures, the fireworks. But love, in its truest form, is quieter. It doesn't need to be constantly affirmed or proved. It simply exists in the stillness. It lives in the unspoken, in the way he rearranges his day so that you're a part of it without needing to be asked. It's how he remembers the smallest details about you, the ones that don't matter to anyone else because they matter to him. What I've learned is that love grows in the gaps, in those moments when nothing is said, and yet everything is communicated. It's in the long pauses, the soft glances, the unspoken understanding that the other person is there and will be there. It's the stability in knowing that even without a word, the connection remains, unwavering. For me, this kind of love is about trust, not trust in the spoken words, but trust in the quiet consistency. Trust that when the world moves fast and everything is chaotic, this love is rooted in something deeper. It's not swayed by fleeting emotions or temporary changes. It's steady. It's a quiet promise that doesn't need to be reminded because it's already embedded in the very fabric of the relationship. I've learned to see love in the way he shifts his world without even thinking about it. How his thoughts, actions, and decisions all seem to effortlessly include me. How his mind has already claimed me without him needing to consciously acknowledge it. And when I look back at all the times I've doubted or questioned or sought reassurance, I realize now that the most real kind of love doesn't need any of that. It simply is. Quietly. Without effort. Without demand. And so I've learned to trust it. Trust the silence. Trust the space between the words. Because in the end, true love doesn't need to be proved. It just needs to be felt, quietly, deeply, and consistently. And once you've felt it, once you've seen it for what it really is, you'll know that everything else was just noise. What remains, what matters, is that quiet, unshakable presence. The love that speaks when nothing is said. The love that rearranges everything, even when you're not looking. It's funny how, after all this time, I've come to realize that love isn't something you can force or control. It's not something that happens because you're trying to make it happen. It's something that evolves on its own, quietly, in ways that you may not even notice until it's already changed everything. And the truth is, once you see it, once you understand how love works at its deepest level, you can never unsee it. I've watched him, over time, become someone different, yet still the same. And in a way, I've changed too. His love didn't demand anything from me. It didn't need to be forced or nurtured constantly. Instead, it flowed naturally, like a river carving its own path over time. He didn't need to ask for permission. His whole being adjusted to make room for me in ways that were both subtle and profound. And I realized, as I watched him, that love isn't about someone trying to impress you or win you over with promises. It's about someone simply being present. It's about their actions, slowly but surely, aligning with something deeper than surface-level attraction or infatuation. What I've come to understand is that love is about integration. It's about two people finding a way to merge their worlds, not by force or design, but through natural connection. It's about the way he shifts his life without even trying, because he's already decided that you're worth the effort. You don't have to beg for their attention. You don't need to question their commitment. It's already been decided for you. And that quiet decision, that choice made in the depths of their subconscious, is what gives love its weight. The most beautiful part is that, in this kind of love, you're never expected to be anything other than who you are. You don't have to perform. You don't have to earn it. It's simply there, rooted in something that runs far deeper than words or actions could ever explain. And when you're lucky enough to experience that, when you're able to fully embrace it, you realize just how rare and precious it is. This kind of love, the one that doesn't need to be chased, the one that doesn't need constant validation, is the one that endures. It's the love that allows you to grow into the person you were meant to be, not because you have to, but because the other person's love makes you feel safe enough to do so. It's in the way they adjust their rhythm without even thinking about it, so that your hearts move in sync. And even if they never say a word, you know you're part of their journey. When I think back to the early days when I wondered whether love would come to me, I realize now that I was looking for it in the wrong places. I wanted the grand gestures, the declarations. I thought love was something that had to be shouted from the rooftops. But now I understand that love is something quieter. It's in the small, almost invisible ways that two people begin to merge their lives. It's in the way someone's life starts to shift to accommodate your presence, even if it's just a small gesture, a quiet change. And I've realized that in this quiet shift, there's a kind of profound beauty. You see the way love moves beneath the surface. You see how it doesn't need to be proved. It simply is. And in that, there's a kind of peace, a kind of security that no amount of words or grand gestures could ever provide. I used to wonder if I was enough, if love would come to me when I least expected it. And now I know that it was never about searching or waiting. It was about being open to the love that comes in its own time, in its own way. Love doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It slips in quietly like the morning sun creeping through the blinds. And when you least expect it, you realize that it has been there all along, slowly, steadily, changing everything. And yet, even as I say this, I know that this quiet love isn't always easy to recognize. There's always that moment of doubt, that brief flicker of uncertainty, where you wonder if you're missing something. You question whether it's enough, whether what you're seeing is real, because it's not loud enough to demand your attention. I've had those moments. I've wondered if his silence meant something was wrong, or if his absence meant that he didn't care. But over time, I've come to understand that silence can be its own kind of answer. Not everything that's real has to be spoken aloud. Not every love has to be broadcasted for the world to see. Some of the most profound connections I've experienced were the quiet ones, the ones where no one else saw what was happening but the two of us. It's in the way he looks at you when no one else is around, in the way he reaches for your hand without thinking, in the way he rearranges his life without making a show of it. It's not the grand, sweeping declarations that define love. It's in the everyday, the small adjustments we make for each other, the quiet understanding that doesn't need to be explained. And when you start to see that, when you begin to trust that the silence is just as telling as the words, you realize that love isn't something that's won or earned. It's something that simply grows on its own time, in its own way. And what's even more beautiful about this kind of love is that it's never forced. It's not about making someone feel obligated. It's about a deep, unspoken understanding that no matter what happens, you belong together. It's a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It's knowing that when you look at each other, you see the same future, not because you've talked about it or planned it, but because it feels right. And even when life throws its challenges, that deep connection holds steady, not because you're trying to make it work, but because it already does. There's a kind of freedom in that, in knowing that love doesn't need to be controlled or shaped. It just is. And when you're loved in this way, when someone shows you their love, not through grand gestures, but through quiet, everyday acts, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. It's as if you've always been meant to fit together, not through effort or expectation, but simply because your souls align. So I'll say it again. even though I've said it before. Love isn't about the big moments. It's about the small, unspoken ones. It's about how someone makes room for you without asking for anything in return. It's about the way they show up, not with words or promises, but with their actions. Subtle, steady, and unwavering. And I've come to believe, more than ever, that this kind of love, the one that doesn't ask for anything, the one that's quiet, present, and real, is the deepest, truest form of love there is. And if you find it, don't ever let it go. Don't doubt it, just trust it. Because love, in its quietest form, is the most profound of all. And here's the thing, once you've experienced this kind of love, once you've truly felt it, you realize how rare and precious it is. It's not something you can find just anywhere or from anyone. It's the kind of connection that builds slowly, like a quiet foundation being laid beneath the surface, unnoticed at first, but strong enough to carry you through everything that comes your way. At first, you might not even realize how much it's shaping you. You don't see the changes until you look back and realize that your heart, your mind, your very being has shifted. You've grown, not because you tried to, but because love has gently pushed you into the best version of yourself. And it's not just about becoming a better partner, but a better person. More grounded, more aware, more attuned to what truly matters. The beauty of this love is that it doesn't need to be constantly affirmed. It doesn't rely on words, on grand gestures, or on making sure the other person knows how much they mean. Instead, it simply exists. It's a quiet knowing that you belong to each other in ways that don't need explaining. It's in the way he shows up for you when you least expect it, in the way he supports your growth without needing anything in return. It's in the way he protects your peace, listens to your dreams, and holds space for your vulnerabilities. Not out of obligation, but out of an unwavering, quiet commitment. And the more I think about it, the more I see that love doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, the imperfection of it is what makes it real, because love is messy. It's not always clear, it's not always neat, but it's real. It's the little cracks that make it strong. It's the moments of doubt, the moments of questioning, that only deepen your understanding of one another. It's not about being flawless, but about showing up day after day in the best way you know how, and trusting that the other person is doing the same. This kind of love is resilient. It doesn't break when times get tough. It doesn't falter when life throws challenges your way. It's built on a deep, unspoken trust that no matter what happens, you'll figure it out together. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up. And that's enough. And maybe, just maybe, this is the love we all deserve. Not the loud, dramatic, fiery kind, but the quiet, steady, soul-deep kind. The one that doesn't need to be announced to the world, because it's already deeply woven into the fabric of your existence. The one that doesn't rely on the big moments, but grows through all the small, unnoticed ones. In the end, love isn't something that's won or earned. It's something that unfolds quietly when two people are ready to be real with each other. It's not about grand declarations or chasing after something unattainable. It's about being present. It's about being real. It's about letting love grow naturally in its own time, and trusting that when it's real, it will always find its way back to you. And when you find it, when you feel it, quietly, deeply, you'll know that you've found something rare, something worth holding on to, even when it doesn't shout. Because true love doesn't need to shout. It speaks in whispers. It speaks in moments of presence. And in those moments, you realize that the love you've been searching for was never something you had to chase. It was always quietly waiting for you, ready to change everything, forever.